Get ready to ride along for another exciting episode of No Driving Gloves, where Derek, John, and Will use over 75 years combined industry knowledge to bring you a bare-knuckled view on the collector car hobby. So let's get rolling. How you guys doing this week?
Fantastic.
Tired.
So don't tell me you've been working all week and doing late nights, Will.
Oh yeah, unfortunately I wasn't able to, grace everybody with my presence last week because we were working, and actually it's we're an hour and 20 minutes late recording tonight because of me at 9:21, and just really quitting for the day, and I still got guys out there going. So yeah, it's pushing to get a car out of the fab shop and into the body shop. So that's what we're doing.
I'd say our download numbers kind of reflected you missing the show last week. I'm not going to tell you if they were up or down, but
well, generally they're up when I'm not around. That's the way it's been in the past. So maybe I just need to quit. You think? What do you think?
No, everybody tells me I got to be careful editing Will, because you kind of bring humor to this.
They're laughing
at
you, not with you.
And you're fantastic.
There you go.
I might have made that up, but sure, we'll go with it. Yeah. No, I'm kind of like Will. I've been, working a lot of hours, and got the side work going with the Model A that we've talked about before, and just seems to keep going. And then, of course, you got to get ready for the holidays. So after I get done working on the Model A at night, I come home and keep going with holiday stuff. So it's been a lot of late nights. Nothing as probably fun as Will working in the shop late at night, but we're carrying on.
I've just been playing with my new 3D printer toy. Kind of amazing, learning the ins and outs of that technology. Really not much else. See here, I've been doing 3-day weekends because of our vacation policy at the day job, and no, I feel sorry for you guys. I've had it pretty easy for the last month.
That don't surprise me.
I thought you've had it easy for like your whole career.
It takes skill to have that kind of dedication to laziness and being able to pull it off. But in all of this sitting around not doing anything, spend a little bit of time on the interwebs. And if you guys haven't heard, I'm sure somehow we will be involved with it, whether or not we're just tagging along or showing up at a couple of events. But the Hot Rod Power Tour will be in June of 2018. And it begins up in Bowling Green, just down the street from Derek. On the first day, second day goes to Chattanooga, and I haven't read exactly where they're going, but I got a feeling Corky Coker is going to be involved with that one. And then they're going to cruise on down, and they'll be about 2 miles from my homestead in Hoover. Just Hoover's a suburb of Birmingham if you're not local. And so we should have a pretty good shot at being around the power tour and hopefully broadcasting from some of that, or maybe doing some interviews there, whether or not we get media passes or we have to go rogue. But hopefully the podcast can be there. And if you're anywhere on the power tour stops, they go Bowling Green, drop down to Birmingham, and then turn, I guess since they're heading south, they'll turn left and end up somewhere in North Carolina. Looks to be a pretty good week of the hot rods and street rods and custom cars and billet aluminum.
Hey, even if we get media passes, can we still go rogue sometimes? Because that'll just be a lot funner.
Don't ask permission, ask forgiveness. It works a lot better, I find.
Exactly.
So came across that one, figured I'd let everybody know it's kind of a classic car, hot rodding type thing to keep this on topic. And we don't know where we're going to go with this one. I heard about a car show, read about it in the summer, and thought, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. But nobody ever said anything, never gained any traction. And then they did one, and that was, I can't remember where at in California. Then they did one 2 week ago in Phoenix called Radwood. And it's a play on the Goodwood Festival of Speed. And we've talked before. I'm into CRXs. I'm into 80s Chryslers. And Radwood is a car show for what I'm going to say is the up-and-coming car collector, the people in their 40s and 50s. One of the articles I read, and no offense to our older listeners, they said there probably wasn't an AARP card to be found in the crowd. I believe that was the quote from Bring a Trailer. Because it's, again, people in their 40s and 50s with their cars from the 80s and 90s, and that's what Radwood lets in, is cars, 80s cars, 90s cars. You dress period, so Tom Selleck wannabes there, Burt Reynolds wannabes. Miami Vice is just screaming there, pastels and Don Johnson and boat shoes and aluminum briefcases. And there was a story about a guy who was traveling to Radwood who got held up at the airport because he was bringing fake drugs to the shows for one of his props to go with his car. And it's being in Phoenix and the huge car culture there. They had everything from a Ford Escort to the 560 SEC with gull-wing doors and wide body and subwoofers, and the thing oozing billet wheels from Boyd, and this kind of cool stuff. And it's really got me stuck on the 80s and the 80 cars out there. And do you guys have any opinions, thoughts about the 80s and car culture, I want to say, in the 80s?
I want to jump in and go back to something you said a minute ago, that you said, I believe it was Bring a Trailer, had a comment which said there wasn't an AARP card to be found in the bunch. And I think that's probably the cool thing about this show, and we've talked about it a little bit in past episodes, where some of the shows are starting to let in more modern cars. Cutoff dates are moving up. This show now we're seeing strictly for 80s and 90s cars. And it's kind of what we talked about in the past episode, where this is what's going to get the youth into the car hobby again and get them, coming out to the shows and becoming part of the community. So I think that was actually a really great comment out of the article that you just pulled out there, John.
And I'm totally in agreement, because it gives me a place if I was to go out and buy a CRX, because right now I'm contemplating buying another toy car. I'd love to have a toy car next summer to play with. And I've been telling myself for a while, I just need to tell the world to mind their own business, and I don't need to buy a Porsche. I don't need to buy a Ferrari. I don't need to buy a hot rod. I need to buy what I like. And whether I go out and buy a Rampage, that 86 or 84 Dodge convertible I want, or a CRX, Radwood gives me a place to take it. And the amount of traction this show has gotten in the last couple of weeks is just amazing. The social media buzz, there's a Facebook page on it now, and it could really begin that vitalization. It's not a revitalization, a vitalization of that era of cars and collecting, because now I've got a place to go. If I go to our local AMC, or I want to say AMCA, AACA car show, they're going to laugh at me if I pull up in a CRX. I can get away with it at our Cars and Coffee and a couple of the other things, but for a show to go and that car to be accepted, it's really appealing to me. There's a thought in the back of my head. I'd love to put together one of these in the Southeast, and I'm sure there's somebody thinking about that in Boston and in Chicago and in Indianapolis. I think what the guys at Radwood have done, and I need to reach out and talk to them and find the organizers and figure out the business plan and business model behind this thing, because this seems to be a really, like I said, for a show that's done this twice, and now they've scheduled to partner with the Lemons Racing Series in Sonoma in March to do Radwood, which is the 80s cars and 80s themes, along with the Concours de Le Mans, which is the showing off of these, makes fun of the Concours d'Elegances, and they're $500, $600, $700 cars people are showing. And then there's the complimentary show called Billet Proof, which is for traditional street rods. No billet accessories, no catalog ordered parts.
Traditional hot rods.
Yes.
Not street rods.
I'm sorry. I still, you're teaching me, Will, but I'm still bad. I still use hot rods and street rods as synonyms, and I know you've lectured me on it off air. Maybe you should lecture me on air, but that it's very, those are the things I enjoy. It's a level of craftsmanship when it comes to those hot rods. Before everything, we talked a couple of weeks ago about, Moon Eyes and SoCal Speed Shop and how they made the hobby attainable to everybody, but it lost a lot of that hand craftsmanship. These shows really appeal to me from just the hands-on point of view to the actively getting the youth involved in the hobby. And then I love the 80s. Like I say, I am waiting for the day for the mullet to come back into style.
Well, I hate to kind of be a bah humbug, but I am not an 80s person. To me, there wasn't a whole lot of good that came out of the 80s. Of course, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 79. So obviously I didn't really get to experience the 80s. But to me, I'm not a big fan of most of the music. I'm not a big fan of most of the cars. I am a fan of some of the music in some of the cars, but the whole, lifestyle of Don Johnson and Miami Vice and all that stuff does not appeal to me at all.
But
however, I'm not done. However, I would support this type of show for the sheer fact of there may be that kid out there that's what he can afford and that's what he can go to, and that gets him into the automotive and the car hobby. I'm for that 100%. If something happens, John, and you do help get one of these shows in the Southeast, I will do everything I can to be there and support it as much as I can. It's not something that I'm going to really get into. I'm not going to play the part. I'm not going to show up dressed like somebody. I may wear a T-shirt that has a cassette tape on it that says, "Okay, I'm 80s out here" or something, But that's about as far as it go for me.
Well, you were 10 at the end of the 80s, and I'm not a big 70s person. I don't understand disco and things like that. When I was 10 years old at the end of the 70s, I was born in 71. So it's completely understandable, but you start incorporating the 90s cars, I'm sure you would enjoy a little bit of Nirvana or Limp Bizkit or one of those bands playing in the background as opposed to the Beach Boys. You would enjoy an 96 Impala SS and LT1 motors and things like that, pre-LS stuff.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of 80s Chevrolet trucks. I'm a fan of Chevrolet trucks from the first one built to the last one built, just to be honest with you. But I'm a square body fan. I've had probably 20 of them. I still own the very first one I ever owned, which was an 85 two-wheel drive K5 Blazer. So, I mean, yes, there are things in the 80s that I do like. So, and in the 90s, I could throw my Blazer together in a 1999 fashion, which I still like. They had air ride in 99. They had big wheels. They had big brakes. They had LS motors in 99. So technically, I could build something that would please me today that would fit into that category.
I've noticed Derek's a little bit quiet. Now he needs to.
I'm a little offended.
I was going to say
I'm a little offended here because Will's sitting here saying nothing good came out of the 1980s. I was born in 1983. Okay, I am the only good thing that came out of the 1980s.
Oh, you're just an 80s baby. Come
that
on.
and Ford Escort ponies.
Exactly.
Square body. Well, see, square bodies came out in the 70s.
Weren't they? They were about 74 or so.
73.
Now, I will say, Will, you touched on something interesting, and that was, or at least what I think is interesting in this conversation, which is you brought up the fact that these might be the only type of cars that the youth that are getting involved here can afford. And I think we can flip that around a little bit and ask the question, is Radwood, are these 80s, 90s era shows, are these the shows that are going to start driving the prices of some of these vehicles up as into the collector car price market? Are we going to see an increase in 80s Mustangs, in 1990s Impala SS? Are we going to start seeing an increase in their values? And I'll say, I probably wouldn't have an 80s car there because I can't really think of a great 80s car that I would want to drive to one of these shows. But I wouldn't mind going out and buying another 1993 Beretta GT like I had as essentially my first high school driver car, and showing up to one of these shows in a 93 Beretta GT. I mean, I had a lot of fun in that car. There's a lot of good memories there in that car. So, I can see having some fun at the show. Well, okay, 1980s, I might roll up in a Chevette. I don't know.
I watch a lot, and like I say, I do Bring a Trailer every day. I read probably 6 or 7 different for sale emails, and I get probably 100 cars across my desk a day that's for sale. Since Radwood a week and a half ago, I've seen a Beretta GTZ. I've seen a Beretta Indy pace car in the teal color they were available in. I've seen an old Cutlass convertible pace car. All of a sudden, these cars are popping. They're on the people that are riding these radars. Somebody sent me a Rampage this week. I think it was totally unrelated, but it was a $3,000 Rampage that it was probably recently painted, but it looked like it was painted in the 80s. It was very 80s-ish graphics on it. That's what I was saying, is it gives me a place to feel that I belong with my CRX or with my 80s Chrysler or my, turbo 4-cylinder Laser, which anything like that. And then, of course, Fox body Mustangs drop right in there as long as you don't put a Coyote motor in it. The Camaros, which are uncollectible, drop in there. The early Miatas drop in there. I want to say if I was to put together one of these shows, I might back it up to 75, just because muscle cars died in 72 or 73 is what everybody says. So let's back it up to 75. That gives a place for the Dodge Tradesman vans that were sold by Dodge on the dealership lots with the bubble porthole windows and shag interior, and gives a place for the vanning culture to go back to, which, and again, watching these things for sale and watching eBay, these 70s era vans are kind of hot. They're never going to be mainstream collectible, but there's a niche, and it gives that niche. So I think putting at the last 25 years of the 20th century, as scary as some of those years were, I think it's really opened my eyes to go, hey, these guys have something. Maybe that's what we need to help build on. Good Guys is rolling like crazy with their shows. We talked about the Power Tour. Hot Rodding is strong. The AACA has their national meets, and their meets everywhere, and their swap meets. And those places are still packed. Those cars are taken care of. You go to a Friday night cruise-in or a Saturday night cruise-in anywhere, it's full of your 60s muscle cars. I think, you don't get that every Friday, but it's got to start somewhere. I looked at this topic talking about the cool cars from the 80s or the cool cars from the 90s, but we're talking more making the youth involved in the acceptance of them.
Well, I mean, what, 4 episodes ago, we did the guy made the, worthless collectible cars of the, most of them are in the 80s.
Yeah, the most worthless collectible cars, the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and we totally bashed that dude's, article that he written, So, I mean, here we go. I mean, it's crazy that we keep bringing this up about the 80s and the 90s cars, and Good Guys has opened up to 87. So, love it or hate it, it's coming. People are going to start building these cars. They're going to start buying these cars. If you want that really nice Beretta GT, you better go get it right now, because I guarantee you 5-10 years from now, you're not going to find it. There's probably still some floating around out there right now. But 5 or 6 years from now, you're not going to find it. It's going to be gone. And that guy's not going to want to get rid of it. So, I mean, it's coming, and it's coming fast.
I agree with Will, because I think it's like we've talked about in the past, where, even our, Will's dad and my dad, we've talked about in the past, where as they were in their youth or their, 30s, 40s, they were saying, oh, well, I'm never going to own that car, or why would anyone ever want to collect that car? We're just starting to see that turnaround, and now it's going to be the 80s and 90s cars. Like Will said, like we've talked about in the past, these are going to be the next cars. They're, as Will said, they're going to be hot. They're going to be starting to get bought up. John, you've already pointed out there's a bunch of them on Bring a Trailer. Prices are going up on them. People are wanting them. I mean, I've looked for Beretta GTs over the past few years, thinking, oh, should I get one and just have it just for fun? And I've seen the price go up every year on those a little bit. And it's what's happening. It's the next step, as we've talked about, in the collector car world, in the hobby, where the kids that are in their 20s now, that's the cars from their youth. And next thing you know, you're going to roll into a car show and Backstreet Boys are going to be playing.
Yeah, I went ahead and did a quick Google search here. On barnfinds.com, since September, October 31st, there's a Quad 4 equipped 1990 Beretta GTZ. On October 9th, there's a 17,000 mile 89 Beretta GT 5-speed. And this car's maroon, etc. I had a buddy when I was in high school, drove this car, ended up crashing it, and long story, but then we go on, and here's the graphics intact 1990 Beretta Indy. That was listed on August 28th for sale. 33,000 mile 88 Beretta on August 30th. And then one, they say impossible to find, and they're right. When's the last time you saw a 92 Chevrolet Lumina Z34 with a 5-speed? That was for sale on August 29th. These things are here. Pace Car Edition 92 Cadillac Alante. That was for sale in September. This is a show where these cars belong, and they would fit in right now. And this show, even if it's small, it gives a place for these cars to go and be shown and be saved. Because be honest, if it wasn't for a Radwood type show or such, where would you go with a 92 Chevrolet Lumina Z34?
To the meth lab.
No, that was a Pontiac. That's a Pontiac Aztec.
Which, by the way, even though it's post 2000, are becoming collectible. I think part of that is the show that drove it. But the Aztec, I've recently read, and I'll agree with, the reason we have the BMW 6M, the reason we have this new Mercedes car-like SUV and such with the slope back, and I can never remember what it is, GLS, GLC, whatever. is because of the Aztec. The Aztec kind of brought this car-like non-SUV slope hatchback thing. Most SUVs we think of are really a derivative of the old Chevrolet Tahoes and Suburbans. It's kind of boxy, and my Edge is about as round as they got until BMW and that came out with these. But really, the Aztec was the predecessor to them, and as ugly as they were, they had a lot of neat features that have creeped across a lot of cars, little options that were in them, the multi-configurable seats, the cooler that was built into the center console, just little things like that, which were radical when the Aztec came out. It was just unfortunate that I guess the designer was also a customer of the same show, or the main character on the same show.
Well, they got a little off topic, but I think this is the beginning of something new. It's like any other show that starts, and I find it interesting that it is including the idea of dressing the part and actually dressing in period clothing of the 80s or 90s, mainly because there aren't really a lot of shows that really promote that idea of doing that. Goodwood Revival does that. There you have to dress in the 50s, 60s era clothing, the racing outfits, whatever you have that is of that era. You have to dress in it to be able to even go to the event and get into certain areas of the event. And beyond that, there's very few other shows. I mean, there's Old Car Festival at Henry Ford Museum that we've talked about out in Greenfield Village. And a lot of the participants that come to the show dress in period clothing to the vehicle they brought, but it's not something necessarily highly encouraged by Old Car Festival. It's just what the participants have decided to do. And over the years of that show happening, it's become more and more popular. I think that's an interesting kind of feature of the show as well, that there is that part of it of dressing the part. Because for those of us that lived through the 80s and 90s, and granted, I was born in the 80s, so I didn't see a lot of the 80s. I did see a lot of the 90s. I really don't want to ever dress like that again. It's not the greatest fashion, and I see some people bringing the 80s and 90s back now in everyday life. And I don't. I'm kind of with Will on that one. I don't know that I could show up in my pastel, and white, sport coat with boat shoes on and pop out of my whatever car I was driving, be it the Beretta, be it a DeLorean, be it a 80s Ferrari, whatever. I'll show up in the car. I don't know if I'll wear the suit.
I would say I remember rolling out of my Dodge Omni 024 with a couple of buddies, in Guess jeans and our jean jackets with our Metallica patches and Poison patches and whatever else, Megadeth patches sewn on them. So it doesn't have to be pastels. Or you can go the complete other way, and you get your Ray-Bans and your members only jacket and your polo shirt, your sweater tied around your waist. I mean, it not everybody dressed like Don Johnson.
What about your?
And I'm sure flannel comes in somewhere a couple of years later.
Can I throw on my ripped jeans and flannel?
No. You got to have tight rolled stonewash jeans.
Yeah, true.
Roll them up. Yeah, there you go.
I don't have those in my closet, but I might actually have some of the other stuff I've referred to.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned.
If I had more hair, I'd do what my sister did and have the rooster bangs,
I've recently been having my hair cut by this girl I know who's a hair student, and she's doing all these extension classes, so I can have my mullet put in just for the weekend.
There you go. It's kind of funny you mentioned members only jacket. one of my really good fabricators out in the shop. He got his grandfather's old members only jacket, and he wears it to work a good bit. It's pretty cool seeing him walk in with it on, because it's
About 10 years ago, Members Only, or whatever company owns the name now, tried to reintroduce that. It didn't really fly again. I mean, but it's an icon of the era.
You're right.
But I remember my Z Cavarucci's. I remember IOU, and it's just like, you know, Abercrombie and Fitch from the late 90s and early 2000s, or whenever their stores were in every mall or in 3 places in every mall. People are going to do it. You know, we're talking about this now, and I'm sure whatever we have for podcasting in 20 years, hopefully there'll be 3 guys sitting around going, "Oh God, they're actually talking about doing the aughts and the teens, and there's a car show, and they're bringing, this is the way this stuff rolls, and this is I think how it happens." And I've repeated myself 14 times now. I'm sure all the listeners are bored with me. I just keep having all of my stuff rolling through my head, and what I wouldn't give to go find an old AMG Hammer Mercedes and go to one of these shows. Which, by the way, there was one recently for sale, so.
See, I'd have to roll up in my square body Chevrolet truck, you know.
Full-size square bodies weren't, well, maybe more in the 90s, but look at, I'm thinking back to my mini truck days, and Will really wants me to build that Isuzu convertible again. You've got that. You've got your Mazda mini trucks with their Testarossa body kits on it. I've recently seen those for sale.
I'm not going to build that. It's ugly. I don't care. I didn't like it then, and I sure as hell don't like it now. So if I go, I want to show up in something that I like. Okay? I mean, I'm not rolling up in a 4 headlight Mustang 2 or a Fox body Mustang. I mean, no.
I see Will potentially, if he coming in one of the new round body Chevys, an 88 or 89. Because I remember an article, and it had to be, let's see here, where I was living in Bloomington, so 92, 93. And it can't be that late, because I remember reading about Boyd Coddington doing the first chop on one of these trucks and laying back the windshield, and the 15-inch Boyd wheels. You know, 195 50-15s were the radical tire right then. You didn't want to be going through, you know, Iowa with those tires without having one in the bed, because if you got a flat, you weren't going to find it. And it's kind of like today, but it's because nobody makes a 195 50-15 because nobody has 15-inch wheels.
Nope.
But that was the radical thing, and then you got into 16s and 17s.
I've got you guys all beat. Okay, I know exactly what I'm showing up in. One of the 1989 to 1995 Ford Shoguns.
Yeah.
You calling your buddy out in California and seeing if Leno's going to lend it to you?
I'll find one somehow. Okay.
I could show up in a Grand National. You know, I could roll one of those.
Then that would work. And I was going to add to Derek's that I actually know a guy in Virginia, used to work with him, that collects Ford Festivas. It's not quite a Shogun.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, the Festiva.
Very much alike.
And it made me think of the Shogun.
And for the listeners that don't know, the Shogun is a Ford Festiva, which was a very boxy econo car that some company came, and I think they built 27 of them or something, and they put a Ford Taurus SHO they put a Ford Taurus SHO motor in the back of it, and put a little bit of a wide body. For real car people, think the Renault R5 turbos, kind of like a lay car with a rear-mounted turbocharged crazy horsepower motor. That's exactly what the Shogun was. And if you search Leno Shogun, he's got one, and he talks about it. And some other famous comedian has one, but they're insane cars.
I could roll a Taurus SHO. I remember my mom and dad had one, and man, that thing would get down. It would roll. One of the
Yamaha 6-cylinder.
One of the V6 Yamaha motors, and it was a 5-speed. You just couldn't dump the clutch; it'd shove the clutch just like that. So I know I've seen me do it.
220 horsepower, which was radical for the day, in a front-wheel drive car. It had torque steer from hell. kind of a play on the Dodge Omni GLH or GLHS. Just way too much power for a front-wheel drive car, but that's all people had to choose from. It's that chassis. And
all right, I know what I'm showing up in: a solid white Bronco. That's what I'm doing.
And I've seen one of those for sale recently. We know exactly what you'd go for. The slightly curved front end one.
Oh.
You have a guy in the back on a bread box cell phone.
That's right. That's right. And we're going after the hottest chicks there.
Yeah, I just have this whole thing planned out in my head. The show, I'd love to do it at a drive-in theater, play some 80s movies, start at mid-afternoon, because we're products of the 80s. We don't like to get up in the morning. So we start the show at 3 in the afternoon and have a little bit of a car show, and then roll right into a drive-in movie in the evening and play. I think I've alluded to, you play Cobra on one screen and maybe Cannonball Run on another screen, and I can't remember. I'm having a tough time on car movies from the 80s and 90s. They really didn't make good car. They've never really made great car movies, but
especially
topic for future show.
Especially in the 80s.
We were coming off Cannonball Run. We can squeeze. We're coming off Smokey and the Bandit, and then we can squeeze Cannonball Run in, because I believe that's 1980 release. It could.
You could throw the Blues Brothers in there.
No, I guess
that was released in 80.
That's 7. Is that okay? I thought that was 77, but it was a 74 Chrysler in there. Which was funny. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who's been buying up old Crown Vic police cars that are decommissioned and then cleaning them up and then reselling them. And he was talking about how hot, etc. they were. And all I could think of was, cop motor, cop tires, cop shocks, whatever. So
now, you know what else would be pretty sweet to show up into the show? The rounded out I think it was like mid 80s into the late 80s Ford Thunderbird.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, man! You could paint it up like Bill Elliott's NASCAR, dude. Now we're talking.
Oh, Buddy had the '88 Cougar, or his parents did, and he borrowed his parents' car, and we wouldn't go out in his 4-door Chevette. He had an '82 blue 4-door Chevette 4-speed, but we could get his parents' Cougar, and you go cruise Main Street in that. My mom got a '87 Chrysler LeBaron convertible in '87. They were actually hard cars to get when we got them. It was the Indy Pace car that year, and ours was red with the black top, gray leather or pleather interior. That was kind of a cool car. People would accuse you of having mommy and dad's car, but fortunately my name was the same as my dad's, so it was on the registration. It wasn't dad's car, as far as the high school girls that I was in high school at the time, we were trying to pick up and, acting all cool and such.
Now, I know it might be too early for this show, but unless we, kind of reach back into the 70s a little bit, but could I show up in one of my Chryslers with their fine Corinthian leather?
Ricardo Montalvan was a friend of Lee Iacocca's, and Lee Iacocca took his job in 1980. So yes.
Listen, John, you need to show up in an 85 LeBaron Town and Country convertible with the wood grain. That's what you need.
I would kill to have one of those cars. And it could be base white or base green. It can't be anything else, but that's just like, we used to have the Dodge 600 ES Turbo convertible, which was the LeBaron with a different grill and did not have the stick-on wood grain. But
now
you gotta have the wood grain.
We're making a little bit of fun of 80s and 90s cars here, but and we keep saying that we don't know if there's anything significant that came out of this era that we'd really want to show up in this at this show. But I think historically speaking, this is coming from someone who's a curator, obviously, and has a history background. But there is one vehicle we're overlooking that would be the most historically significant to show up to Radwood in. Anybody want? Nope.
Corvette.
The minivan.
Oh,
a minivan.
Yeah, baby.
I can post a link. 84, 85 Dodge Caravans are some of the hottest cars right now from the 80s. And if you really get into looking at them, there was a work van with paneled sides. And for a period of time, it might have been 86, 87, they built a 5-speed floor shift turbo Chrysler minivan.
If anyone has one of those, please let me know, because that sounds extremely fun and I would love to drive it.
I will send you a link. I recently, surprise, saw one for sale.
Now I can see Will rolling up in a Dodge Caravan.
Hell yeah. Oh, no minivans for me there.
Come on, you've got kids, you've got a wife. That's what minivans are meant for.
Not my kids and not my wife. I kid my wife some about getting a minivan, and she cusses me out. Yeah. So yeah, no. Now, okay, if we're doing it as a joke, yeah, I'm all about it. But on a serious note, no way. No minivan for me.
How many times do you know that we're actually serious on this show?
That's true. Give me a minivan. Let's go. I'm ready. Only if John rides shotgun with his mullet and his members only jacket and his white, Reeboks? Wasn't it Reeboks back then? Solid white Reeboks?
My shoes in the late 80s, I had ASIC Tigers and I had Nikes, and the Nikes I know were base white with red toes and a red heel and metallic gold swooshes, and the ASICs, I can't remember the base color, but the logo on those was also metallic gold. It's not like I'm stuck in the 80s or anything.
I think I had, what were they? Nike pumps in the 90s, the ones that you had the little thing on the tongue that you'd pump up.
Reebok pumps.
Was that Reeboks? Okay. Yep. I couldn't remember which one it was. But if we're rolling in the minivan, I want to sit in the rear-facing seat at the back.
Did those have those?
No, minivans never had a rear-facing seat. Let's see here. October 5th, 2017, 85 Dodge Caravan, $6,500. I'm trying to figure out how many miles are on it. Stored and covered and
145,000.
No, that's the 1990 Turbo.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
This was a different listing. Okay. And let me throw in this, like I said, I'm a product of the 80s and I don't deny it. We had one of the first Caravans. We had an 84 Dodge Caravan, maroon, 5-passenger version. One of the very first ones sold. We also had an 85 an 86, an 87. No, we didn't have an 87. We had an 88. We had an 89. We had a 90. We had a 91. We pretty much have had Caravans from just about every model year up until they went egg-shaped. And to this day, well, I guess about 4 months ago, my dad finally gave up his Caravan for a Honda Odyssey. He loved his Caravans. He drove a Caravan daily until 93 when he got his Lexus. Drove his Lexus for a couple of years, got a Dodge Ram to replace it because it had a snowplow. And when he stopped driving the Dodge Ram, he went back to Dodge Caravans and drove those up until the Honda Odyssey just a couple of months ago. So I am all about minivans. I love Caravans, and like I said, anything 80s Chrysler on a K-car platform, I want in my garage. And remember, I don't have kids, so I'm not worried about leaving them anything.
Oh.
Even if I did, obviously, I'm not leaving them anything with a car collection like that, unless Radwood takes off.
John, you worry me sometimes, man. But you know what?
Am I being removed from the podcast now because I've turned in my car guy card?
No, excuse me, definitely not. But you know, hey, it takes all to make the world go round, right? So, I'm not making fun of you by any means for liking.
But I've left you speechless.
You definitely have. And you refer to them a lot, so I don't know why it always surprises me when you talk about really liking those cars. I mean, do you like them just for the sheer fact that you guys had them growing up and you enjoyed riding in them in the memories, or you think they look good? You think they ride good? You think they handle good? They had good motor, transmission, brakes? I mean, what's your reasoning for really liking those cars?
Honestly, I think it is the memories.
Yeah.
I think that they are good-looking cars. They are the least reliable things anymore, and that's what keeps me from buying them because I don't want to work on them. They're nightmares to work on.
Yeah.
They're cobbled together parts from Volkswagen, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, and any other parts bin that Iacocca could get his hands into. That's why I don't have them, but I see them for sale all the time. They're $2,000 to $5,000 all day long, and it was my youth. It's what I grew up with.
I got you. See, I grew up in my dad always having Chevrolet trucks, and I remember him having a K5 Blazer. So that's probably one of the biggest reasons I've always liked those trucks.
You grew up around hot rods. You grew up in a racing scene, and that's your love today. And I think that gets instilled into us when we're youths.
Yeah. Well, that's a great reason to like something. It's your memories of riding with your mom and dad to the grocery store, or halfway across the country on vacation, whatever you were doing.
I'm sure my psychiatrist, if he listened to this episode, would worry a little bit about my childhood and why I'm still obsessed with it. But, I had fun. I think I had a good childhood, and we enjoyed it. And in any little parts of it that are neat. Plus, they're rare cars. When's the last time you saw that 85 LeBaron Woody convertible actually driving down the road? We will see them online for sale. When's the last time you knew somebody who owned them?
Well, here's my thing about that rare car. Just because it's rare, don't mean it's valuable. It was rare then because it was ugly then, and it's still ugly now. So, I hate to keep beating a dead horse here, but
that is the valid argument. We hear it all the time, and I'm sure Derek does with museum donations. Oh, it was rare. The reason it's rare is because nobody liked it then.
That's right. You're exactly.
But the thing when it comes to K cars or Ford Escorts or these Chrysler convertibles, they sold a brick ton of them.
True.
Except that's the second half. They were unreliable, they were junk, and they went away. They didn't last. If you have a 64 Impala convertible, you can leave it sit outside for 40 years, and it's only going to rust halfway through the sheet metal.
Yeah.
You leave a 85 Chrysler LeBaron outside for 40 years, you're going to have a vacant lot because it's going to rust to nothing.
There's not even going to be any dust there. Hey, Derek.
Hey, sorry, I got lost in research. My bad.
All right.
I sent him that Turbo Caravan link, and
he was on it.
I was all over it, and then I was also trying to figure out why I had in this vision in my head of riding rear facing in a van, and I think it's because I was blending a few childhood memories together. So I apologize.
Yeah.
That was we had a minivan. My mom had a Dodge Caravan at one point, but then some of my family members also had full-size vans, and some of those had the captain's chairs that you could spin around in and face backwards and do all the fancy things. I think I blended two things in my mind there. So,
well, a lot of the station wagons back then.
Well, we did have one of those.
Wagons.
The GM station wagons were through the. I couldn't tell you when it started, but till my grandfather's last one was rear facing seat.
Yep.
I don't know if the Egg Impalas had the rear facing seat, but his Pontiac Parisienne wagon from '89, I think, had the rear facing seat.
Yep. I'm pretty sure that those bubble Impalas and Caprices, the Caprice wagons, I think the 9-passenger ones had a rear facing seat. I could be wrong. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure they did.
And the Fords that my grandfather had, the wagons, they had the seat was in the same place, but they would open up with the backs to the side of the car, so you sat sideways in them. But the GMs, you faced rear, and
it was a lot easier to get in and out of the GM ones than it was the Ford ones.
Things you can't do anymore in the name of safety because we don't want to kill our kids.
That's right.
Well, somehow we have probably thoroughly bored everyone, and if you were still listening, we'll close it up here. We'll let you know if I actually run with my crazy idea about Radwood and such. In the final gift card giveaway, we appreciate everybody checking out, our Amazon link, etc. Our chosen winner for that final $10 gift card is Troy Wesson. He's commented tons on social media, so I don't know if he was begging for his $10 or what, but we'll reach out to Troy. We'll get him that card, and remember, check out the website for the affiliate links. We've got some things on there that we suggested. We kind of barraged Facebook for about a week with some gift ideas. And we do appreciate those of you that have clicked the links and have went through and purchased a few items. Might end up turning into a soundboard or something for one of us. Is there anything else that you guys want to pick on me about or say about 80s cars, 90s cars, the Radwood movement, or are we out of here for the evening?
I'm good. Congratulations, Troy. Thanks for the support, man. And, I enjoyed this episode. I thought it was pretty good. And I was questioning it a little bit when we first got started. But, I think it turned out good. I think it's going to be a good episode.
Listeners, let us know if you have any topics. Please go ahead and shoot us a message. We do have our topic list, but we would like to talk about. Maybe you want to hear us debate or laugh or make fun of or seriously discuss something that's concerning you or a question in the collector car or even just the automobile hobby anymore. Derek, do you have any last minute words?
No, I think it was a good conversation. And if you decide to put together a Radwood show, let us know well enough in advance. Maybe I'll pick something up and drive down there from Kentucky and roll out in my, I don't know, white suit with pastels.
Well, that shall be it for the evening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm out of here.
Later.